in the context of COP, when people are doing meetings and meetings and meetings to try and get people to come together. But this was really to have a leadership conversation around looking at agriculture and how to really drive the agriculture agenda within the context of climate change. And so we have 4 CEOs representing the full span of sectors. And so the idea is really to create a conversation. There's no PowerPoints. There is no long 15-minute speeches or anything like that. I mean, really what we wanted to have is a dialogue. And I'm saying that because then I want to involve you in that dialogue. And so I think we all felt that what we wanted was a conversation in the room. And rather than just a question and answer session, but actually to try and encourage a dialogue. My name's Sean McLean. I'm a Senior Vice President in Strategy at YARA, and but also Chair of the World Economic Forum New Vision for Agriculture. And so, as I said, Vice President in Strategy at YARA, and also Chair of the World Economic Forum New Vision for Agriculture. And, the word for the communications. Right, so Frederick Hager, the CEO of Bellona, and Kristen Halverson, the CEO of CICERO, who are the hosts of this very nice actually pavilion. I just arrived my first day today. I thought it was very nicely done. And then Sven Tore Holstetter, the CEO of YARA, and John Bryant, the Chairman and CEO of Kellogg. So a fairly good cross-section there. Okay, I'm going to, maybe just to set the agricultural context, I'm going to start with the 2 gentlemen on the far right, and then bring in Bellona and CICERO as well. But maybe, Sven Tore, starting with yourself. I mean, agriculture and climate change, it is, we're watching having to, grow more, and with an increasing population base, and with fewer resources in the future. So this is obviously a significant challenge, and it's obviously something that people care about. This is the food that we eat every day. So how this is done in a sustainable way is obviously very important. So from YARA's perspective, I mean, how are you looking at this, and what do you see as the challenges?
Certainly. Thank you very much, Sean. And ladies and gentlemen, today we're already more than 7 billion people on Earth, and by year 2050 we'll add another 1.5 billion people, reaching 9 billion people. And we need to create growth to accommodate this growing population, while at the same time resolving some of the global challenges that we see now. This is a wake-up call for business, and also an opportunity and driver for strategy. Already today, 800 people don't get enough food in the world, and if we were to put them all in the same food line, it would stretch 10 times across the globe. I believe that we can grow enough food today and also in the years to come. But how do we do that while also reducing greenhouse gas emissions? The agricultural sector is a key part to the solution for several of the sustainable development goals as defined by the United Nations. Agriculture accounts for approximately 1/4 of the global greenhouse gas emissions, and the largest share of this comes from deforestation and land use change. In the report, the new climate economy, land use is one of the key areas for action, and that's through productivity and also restoration of land. So besides smarter cities and energy, land use is targeted by this panel of global leaders and experts as a key area for action and investments. So let's take a look at Tanzania. Here we expect the population to triple by the year 2050, and maize need will increase substantially. And if there's no increase in yield, there's a need for another 9 million hectares of farmland that needs to be cleared. And it's absolutely vital that Tanzania smallholders succeed in growing higher yields. And this was the basis for the establishment of the Southern Agricultural Growth Corridor of Tanzania, or SAGCOT. This was started in 2009 with President Kikwete of Tanzania, and it's a private-public partnership with today more than 70 partners from all sectors. SAGCOT is, to me, a prime example of a private-public partnership that has created alignment towards mutual goals. Still, we need to do more than increasing yields, and certainly YARA consumes natural gas for our production. In the last decade, we have reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by 50%. So we have already achieved a reduction that COP21 is targeting as a global level. But reducing our own emissions is just the foundation for creating solutions. We are pioneering knowledge and tools to incorporate carbon footprint into the value chains. And example, through the Cool Farm tool, the University of Aberdeen, together with private sector partners, have developed this online tool to help farmers reduce the carbon footprint. There is an opportunity to make low emissions a competitive advantage. But to achieve this, private sector, policymakers, and consumers must pull in the same direction. So we as YARA can do a lot, not at least by partnering with the farmers. But climate smart farming involves more than one single company can resolve. It's complex. But workshops such as this one are important in order to inspire collaboration across and within the sectors. So with that, I thank you.
Great, thanks, Ventura. And I think, I mean, for Kellogg, John Bryant, I mean, this is what's interesting. I'm starting to see is much more end-to-end value chain cooperation. The fact that you've got a fertilizer player standing here, talking to someone like yourself. Historically, the farmer was a natural point of division, but now you're looking at the whole thing. But also, probably, to Ventura's point, you're also looking beyond just your own footprint. I would imagine looking at those communities and where those farmers live and the whole wider aspect. And so, from a Kellogg perspective, your thoughts.
Sounds great. Well, maybe just a quick few comments on why it's important to us. 3 reasons why we have to make progress in serving the Kellogg Company. One is in the DNA of our company. Mr. Kellogg was one of the great philanthropists in the world. He actually gave away almost all of his wealth to create the Kellogg Foundation, one of the 5 largest charities in the world. That organization is still the major shareholder in the Kellogg Company. So obviously, that connection is still there today. But even if we look at it purely as a for-profit organization, that's what the Kellogg Company is, we're a Fortune 500 company. So the total value of the company is about $30 billion. We are absolutely committed to making progress in space because it's the right thing to do and it's the right thing for the economics of our business. 2 reasons. The consumer absolutely cares. The consumer has moved to a point now where they want to know, where is my food coming from? How is it produced? And prove to me that you're doing the right things back in the supply chain. The other reason, fundamental reason, is if we look at an enterprise risk model of our company, so what are the big risks that we face? The price of grains and the very availability of grains. becoming at risk. So we see when a drought occurs these days in various parts around the world, obviously the price goes up. But when you start having food rice, like we had in Cairo a few years ago, and the Egyptian government closes the border to the export of rice, we were using that rice to make Rice Krispies here in Europe. So the supply chain is fragile. And so we need to invest back into the supply chain to make it more robust. Historically, we've always had the sorts of sustainability goals, whether it be greenhouse gas emissions, waste, water, etc., within our plants, that you expect from a company like Kellogg. But today we're going right back end-to-end supply chain, from the farm all the way to the breakfast table. What is our responsibility across that entire supply chain? Where's the carbon footprint? What can we do to reduce that impact? And as you'd expect, most of that footprint is actually back on the farm. And when you get back on the farm, how then do we apply practices that will reduce the impact in line with the 2 degrees Celsius science? Very different tools and techniques depending on where you are around the world. If you're in an emerging market, so you're working with care in India, having corn growers in India put alternative crops between the rows of corn improves biodiversity of the soil and even improves the output, the productivity of the corn itself. You then come to Michigan, Louisiana, and there's application of big data to farming technology, planting the right seeds, right place, right time in the field. Very different solutions, very different situations within our end-to-end supply chain. So we are much more aggressive, upwards and backwards through the supply chain for both a philanthropic and social good reason, back to the DNA of our company, but also because it makes good common sense for us to be active in this space from a purely commercial perspective.
Excellent, thank you. And so, Kristen Hallison, I mean, you're listening to this. You've got 2 CEOs of the private sector. You're looking at it from a research perspective, and also the impact that this has on communities. And that I know you've been focusing a lot on things like adaptation, because this is not just something that needs to be measured in terms of future supply chains. This is impacting on farmers, whether they be in Africa or in the Himalayas right now. And so, what do you see as some of the critical issues here in that respect?
Yeah, let me first say that I fully agree that consumers, especially in the Western countries, they will care much more about how food are produced, the carbon footprint, and I think that all companies that care about how their reputation has to reduce our rates. But let me maybe see this from a bit different angle, because we know that 50% of the food produced in the world today is produced by very small farmers. Okay, are produced by small farmers in rural areas, and they are often in a situation where there are the women that are producing. The men has left. In Himalaya, we have several researchers working together with local municipalities and communities on how to adapt to climate change, because they are the farmers can see every day that things are different from the year before. They have to diverse what they are growing. They have to be very much more concerned about the weather, when it's going to rain, where the water is going, and it just underlines that we have to see agriculture, the 2 challenges that we have to feed the growing population of the world, and to make it possible for the small farmers to continue to produce food in the rural areas. That is crucial. If not, we are not going to succeed in feeding the world. So when we have had researchers working on these topics, and I visited some of these small villages, it's you can see that all the men in Nepal, for instance, have left. All the young men, all the fathers who left, they are working in Kathmandu or in the Middle East. It's women that are taking care of the agriculture and the production, they are taking care of everything. And the men are coming back home maybe once or twice a year. So when we are working on understanding how it's possible to adapt to climate change, women are crucial. And from the outside, many people believe that it's the men that are making all the decisions in those local communities, and it's maybe they think they do, but they don't, because they're not there. So it's the women that decides, and that is also extremely important when we're trying to build competence together with the locals on how is the weather and the water and everything going to change, and how is it possible to adapt? What kind of new things should they start to grow? Is it possible to develop some kind of enterprises connected to farming, so it's possible to stay there? How do you use fertilizer in an efficient way to support this small-scale farming? And I think that's what small farmers are experiencing in Nepal. It's not exactly the same as they do in Tanzania or other parts of the world, but it's very, very similar. And the key is that we have to have a holistic approach when we are discussing these matters. If not, we will not succeed. And we have to respect the local knowledge and add research to that and develop together with the locals how we should do that.
And I mean, have you seen the pace of change increase? Because that's very difficult. If you're a smallholder farmer in Nepal or in Tanzania or I think you were talking about, was it India? I mean, what I'm seeing and talking to farmers is they're saying, whereas they were able to make generational changes, my grandfather did it this way, and then my father did it this way, or my mother did it this way, my grandmother did it this way. That those changes are now having to move, significantly faster, which is creating, a lot of social tension. And so, do you see that? Is that a reflection?
Absolutely, absolutely. They can't, rely on the knowledge from generation before. They have to take into consideration that things are changing very fast, and they have to decide to grow other kinds of, for instance, rice and different more. Because if the snow is coming too early, the crops is ruined, and so that is something that people do all the time. They don't need researchers from Norway to go there and find. But what we can contribute or can discuss with them, and where research comes into this, is how you can have local processes that sticks into a system that you can, because you have to change far more rapidly than ever before, and that is very challenging for these very poor, very small societies.
Just before I go to Frederick, just a quick question to the two of you. I mean, do you think from a business perspective, I mean, traditionally you would test out a project, you would maybe spend years on a nice little pilot initiative and get everything right. But linked to this change question, is there a scale? There's a sort of pace of change, but also this needs to be done at scale. And this is, I'll bring Frederick in a minute to also take us through a broader framework around scale. But just before I do that, I mean, are you seeing that? Are you both seeing that these sorts of initiatives really have to both increase in size and speed, but very much the scale, the whole value chain approach, a range of different partners coming in?
I can start on that. And at YARA, what we produce are fertilizers, what we deliver are solutions. And just show here we have our logo, and directly below the logo it says knowledge grows, and that's what it's all about, giving the right advice to the farmers on the right application of our products. That is how we can build the most efficient use of our products. And I think we have already come quite far when it comes to bring this message out to the farmers. And as an example of that, just in the last 12 months in Asia alone, YARA together with partners have had classroom sessions, workshops, and one-to-one meetings with 250,000 farmers on the most appropriate use of fertilizer in order to drive their yields. So I think this is really key to the development of our companies, our company and the industry in general, that we actually increase the awareness of the products and how it can impact the farmer.
John?
I would agree. I think scale and impact. So scale, we're working with 500,000 farmers on kind of sustainable agricultural practices, but also impact in terms of smallholder farmers, women. So it's a combination of both. It's both getting those agricultural practices out there, but also providing those practices where they need it the most for the people who are in greatest need of those practices.
So Frederick Hago, if I turn to you from a Bellona side of things, I mean, this has been a very agriculture-specific conversation, but this fits into the context of a much broader question around biomass and around needing to rethink, how we take this forward. I mean, what do you see really, when it comes to agriculture, putting that into the broader context? Bellona, I've always been incredibly impressed by their ability to think big and come up with bold new visions for the future. So,
thank you. I think when we're looking into these issues, we should go back to the Copenhagen negotiations. It's happened a lot. Solar has become cheaper, batteries have become cheaper, wind has become cheaper. But there's two very important issues that we have big challenges. You mentioned the new climate economy report. We both have to stop deforestation. And then we should revegetate around 500 million hectares, according to the new climate economy report. That's a huge area. And then we know that the agriculture will be the sector that maybe will be most influenced with the temperature changes. And we're going to feed a lot more people. So we need some big thinking, and it's enough for people thinking small thinking. So we try to think big. We think that if you look at IPCC in 2014, if you don't have enough biomass, then it will be up to 60% more expensive to achieve the climate targets. It's quite a big figure if you compare it with the same scenarios that if you phase out all the nuclear, it will be 7% more expensive. So that shows how important the biomass issue, both for food, but also because biomass is a way to also balance unregulated power into the energy system. We need to think new. And for us, it's extremely important both to be more efficient. We have to do this without conflicting with biodiversity. We will have less resources of fresh water, and we will have more people to feed, and we need more bioenergy. So we have to think big here. I think that for us, it's been extremely interesting to work together with YARA in building the pilot we did with Sahara Forest Project in Qatar, where we got a proof of concept where we could produce food by seawater in an intricate system with the seawater greenhouse that is evaporating salt water, half the price of what Qatar is importing food for. And for us, it's been very few people working with the combination of using seawater for biomass production. And this is both possible by pumping seawater into land and make new technologies enabling this. And I think that more than anything, if we could make deserts to food production areas and at the same time bind CO2 in the soil, we get many add-on. But we also need to be willing to look at food production and biomass production in the ocean. Very few people have been working on that. We're coming from Norway. We earned money in the early days on selling bird shit as fertilizer to the rest of the world from the bird mountains. Yeah? But by what we're also doing now, by growing seaweed around the Norwegian fish farming industry, taking care of the nutrition, maybe in the future be able to produce biogas, can even do energy production, carbon capture, and go carbon negative. But you also then could get nutrition up from the ocean and use this in, for example, projects like Sahara Forest Project. So we need really to be innovative, both when it comes to in general producing biomass, how we produce food. And what makes me a little bit optimistic is to see that the industry is doing the job. I think the emission reductions that's been achieved by YARA is inspiring a lot of companies to say it's possible to do something. Yeah? But we need new ways of thinking. We need to be able to be innovative on these topics. It was questioned here about how important the women are in agriculture. We have now spent a lot of resources in Jordania talking with all the women doing agriculture before we build the test and demonstration center and take what we did in Qatar further on, because they're a really important part of getting this up and going. But growing green by black numbers is a very good slogan, and we need to understand that even if it looks very nice in the saying when we want more ecological farming and so on, land use change is one of the biggest challenges we have, and we have ended up in a conclusion that the right use of fertilizer is necessary to also produce all that kind of biomass we need in the future. We could, as I say, if we manage to find new ways without conflicting with biodiversity, freshwater, and land use, then we could save the cost with up to 60% by doing it the right way with the producing enough biomass. So it's an extremely important task to have that.
Can I just ask you though? Okay, Prime Minister, thank you for coming. So can I just ask you a question, and it's very apt with from Costa Rica, with the Minister from Costa Rica just coming into the room, because it's around systems leadership. I mean, because when I listen to you all talk in a way, what we're really having to see is that it's going to require a new leadership paradigm, and this is interesting in the context of COP, which really forces us to think out of our comfort zone, to think out of the silos that we've traditionally worked in, whether that's specific, sector-based silos or specific. I mean, we feel, I'm sure, for a company like YARA, they feel very comfortable just talking about agriculture. But then you get into the broader conversation of land use change and biomass. This takes it into a much bigger space, and it's going to require leaders that are able to then look across sectors, across things, bring these together, break the traditional silos, and work in a much more integrated way. And I mean, are we seeing that emerge? You were talking about confidence just now, and we're looking at scale and impact and some of these things that have come up, cross-value chain thinking. Do you see that kind of leadership's emerging, or do we need to really drive that more?
I see more cross-sector work. I see that, in a way we need to work with synergies between technology and symbiosis between biology. One of the fascinating things with Sahara Forest Project for me is that by bringing seawater into the desert and being able to dry that completely, that's important, if not it will be very wet. You enable also by biomass large-scale renewable production, because one of the biggest challenges in developing countries is if you build a solar plant and you get a contract with the grid operator, but in some countries that contract, 20 years contract with the grid operator, is not very valuable for the investor. By doing this kind of technology, and you could use the biomass to store the energy from renewable, and you're not dependent on selling that electricity to your local grid company. You could produce it into food and biomass, and you have the whole world market potential, which helps to get investors into these projects. It also illustrates that we need to be willing to move capital and material intensive energy production in the West, in the rich countries, to more labor intensive energy production in developing countries, because at the end, carbon dioxide is a kind of bank loan we have got that the rich countries has used to increase their welfare. Normally, bank loan will be paid back with an interest. And if the rich countries could be committing, if we find sustainable ways of producing biomass, rich countries could create dynamic in the climate work by commit themselves to buy sustainable produced biomass from developing countries. And instead of investing in big many tons of concrete and steel and nuclear and cement and so on, try to do this.
So reframing the economy. Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing is a rethink in the economy. So some quite different thinking there. Just for the three of you, does anyone want to pick up on this cross-sector leadership piece? And then I'm going to involve people out here who I'm sure have some comments and create a bit of a conversation.
If I could, I think the cooperation across the private sector is very important, combined with the public sector. Of course, when we see the impact that we can have on smallholder farmers by educating on the right use of fertilizer, modern techniques with agriculture, that's one part of it. But to also create security on the offtake of the product, where we link that to companies like with Kellogg here, that if you produce in a certain way with certain techniques, then there's a certainty on the offtake of that. And I see several examples of that, where we can really provide the security for the smallholders in developing their farms. And the challenge for us in the private sector is how do we multiply that on a much greater scale than we have today.
Yeah, I think it's a case of 1 + 1 = 3. I spend time thinking about how I can make it more complex. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about how we can use the oceans and deserts, etc. But the fact we're having this conversation with part of this panel is a positive step. Last night I had dinner next to a chef who was telling me he has all these ideas for disaster relief. If something happened in Haiti next time, here's how the food industry should react differently. And it's just a great opportunity to have those discussions. Companies tend to be very focused on their business and on driving 3-year, 5-year agendas, because that's the horizon at which we execute. But it's great to have the opportunity to take these sorts of environments, take a broader lens, take a bigger perspective, and who knows what will come out of these sorts of environments.
I'd just like to add that I grew up in Porsgrunn, which is a very famous place for producing fertilizer, and my father, he worked at several fertilizer plants, including building this fertilizer plant in Qatar. And then when I grew up, I could only remember one thing, and that was that the aim was to sell as much fertilizer as possible. So I think that the real change from what I hear now is the concern connected to the knowledge of those who buy this fertilizer and how to use it smart, and to build the competence that adds value to the smallholder farmers. And of course, that is also building trust. So I think that's a major change in how YARA now is thinking compared to what I grew up with 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, or maybe 50 years ago.
So I could add to that. It's around 28 years ago, before YARA was split out from Hydro, I went into the facility in Porsgrunn and digged up all their waste. And now we're working here together, action through connection. And that must be called a development, because there is no other way than industrialize the environmental solutions.
Yeah, and so okay, that's a very good note to end on. Right, I'm gonna I can see the development funds, got their hand up. I'd love to bring you in. I'm also going to give some sort of head warning for you to think about. I mean, obviously, the minister from Costa Rica. I'd like to get your thoughts on agriculture and how the agriculture sector can change. I see the Cool Farm tool in the room, so it was actually mentioned here. So I'd love to bring you in, Simon. And Eric Solheim, just to give you've been involved in this journey also a bit from the start, right there at the beginning in terms of some of these interlocking corridor thinking in Tanzania and how you bring green corridors in. So also just some of your broader perspectives. So, but maybe from your side, I mean, you're listening to this, sitting there from a sort of civil society perspective, heavily involved in, say, some of these initiatives. We've often discuss things around Malawi and things like that. I mean, but what are you sort of seeing or listening when you listen to this? How are you interpreting some of this?
Could people introduce themselves, please?
Yeah, and if you introduce yourself as you, that would be nice. Yeah.
I'll do that. My name is Carrie. I'm the director of a Norwegian NGO called the Development Fund, and we reach out to around 500,000 smallholders every year with the extension services as one part of it. To me, we had an event together with YARA last week here in the same room, and at that event there was the leader of the World Farmers Association. She was here. And when she speaks, I very much agree with what she says. We need organization, we need systems. It's about technology, but we have a lot of the technology. We have a lot of the knowledge about how to grow food in a climate smart way. I know there are a number of theories about how to do it, but there is quite a lot of knowledge already. And especially if you look at the African continent, I think what you really need is organization of farmers. So it's crucial that Kellogg as a big producer, and of course YARA is one of the actual main actors on the African continent when it comes to agriculture, that you're in these discussions and to see that agriculture is so high on the agenda, at least outside the negotiation room on this COP is good, because there's really no time. If you look at the smallholders in Malawi, for example, there's the flooding, the dry season now in Ethiopia. People are starving again. The government is better prepared now than they were some 30 years ago, but it is a dire situation. And I think the smallholders would be better off if they were better adapted and if they were more climate robust. So to me, it's really great to especially see a Norwegian company with a Norwegian base being part of it, and I hope that you will also cooperate with World Farmers organizations on the African continent, with civil society, have the social aspect of it, because it's really a very, very difficult situation for the people of the future. They're not talking about the future of climate change. It is here and now. It's happening now. So the social responsibility for creating extension services is essential.
So if I bring you in now, I mean, for Costa Rica, it would be lovely to hear, based on what Development Fund were just saying as an NGO, this need to actually organize farmers much better. We heard earlier, just before you came in, there was some the critical need for farmers, smallholder farmers, to actually already be adapting. The adaptation, this is not just about mitigation, it's actually about the whole adaptation. We've heard a lot about end-to-end value chain thinking, to actually integrate this. But from a Costa Rica perspective, what do you see as sort of some of the key issues that are coming up for you as a country in terms of meeting these challenges?
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Felipe Arauz. I'm the Minister of Agriculture of Costa Rica.
Please come up, then we can hear you. Yes.
Again, thank you very much. My name is Felipe Arauz. I'm the Minister of Agriculture of Costa Rica. First of all, I want to apologize. I spent about half an hour looking for the meeting room. I was in the blue zone because that's what I got in the email invitation to start working. Finally made it here, thanks to my colleagues. They're more knowledgeable than me.
I know that feeling, so I apologize. I've been lost myself here.
Okay, but what are the main things? Oh, that's a tough question, because we need to even redesign agricultural systems. That's a big issue. I mean, that sounds very big, but we need to think differently. We cannot mitigate if we do not adapt at the same time. So the two things come together, and those things require a thorough understanding of the agro-ecosystem. So we need more agroecological thinking. When I see these words, action through connection, that's what agroecology is all about. And understanding the connections within the agroecosystem and outside the agroecosystem with other systems. And if we understand those connections, we can manage the system in order to enhance those connections that bring a more favorable result. And I will put a few examples of that. For example, if you manage pastures so that they would fix carbon in the soil will result in better roots of the plants, better adaptation to water scarcity. It also mitigates and also helps the efficiency in the use of fertilizers. We need to rethink how we think about breeding, for example. When I was studying agriculture back in the 70s, a good variety was the one that responded well to fertilizers. The response to fertilizers was a good thing. So we ended up breeding plants that were very needy for external inputs instead of breeding for hardiness or for adaptation to stress tolerance and so on. So that's another idea. The other idea is that we need to come from theory to practice in climate smart agriculture. That's the concept we are pushing for. Yesterday we had a declaration of Central America to promote climate smart agriculture. And when we see things like greenhouse gas emissions in agricultural systems, many of them we can view as inefficiencies of the system. Why is that? Because if we have nitrous oxide production, that is nitrogen that the grower paid, applied, and didn't go to produce protein or to produce plant growth or animal growth or milk or whatever. If we see methane from cattle production, that methane is carbon that didn't go to produce meat or milk. So in a conceptual frame, those are inefficiencies of the system. So to make the system efficient, we need to come from the theory to a practical application. For example, slow release fertilizer is one of the things that we can think about that helps us to put the right amount of fertilizer, and it's going to be used by the plant in a right way instead of going to the environment to produce either contaminating groundwater or producing nitrous oxide and greenhouse gases. So those are things that we need to look at. The same with other sources of greenhouse gases. So that brings us to a better understanding of the system, and we can use those technologies or techniques or practices that further allow us to do so. I already mentioned slow release fertilizers. Another technology that we need to look at from a climate change perspective is precision irrigation, especially if you put the fertilizer within the irrigation, because that saves water. We can use 10 times less water, so that's adaptation. You can use you put the fertilizer in the water, so there's less waste of fertilizer, so you can reduce, and that's in the literature, you can reduce N2O emissions by 1/3 by doing that, and you can increase yield. So you need the three things in the equation: production, adaptation, and mitigation at the same time, if we need to really make a difference. In Costa Rica, we have some experiences. In Costa Rica, we have the agricultural sector accounts for 40% of the total emissions of the country. That is because the electricity sector emits very little because it's mainly renewable, 95% renewable sources, hydroelectric mainly. But from that 40%, 65% of that is in the coffee sector, in the livestock sector. So we have put together NAMAs in both sectors, which are tied to planting trees. In the livestock, we do a better job with pastures, divide them, and put live fences there. So we have trees, and we have shade for the cattle, and we have data that say the cattle that rest under shade would have less heat stress, so it's an adaptation strategy. The trees would capture carbon, so it's a mitigation strategy. And by having less heat stress, the productivity rises in 10 to 15% per cow, just by having trees in the pastures. So those are the kind of things we need to look at. So we have a NAMA in cattle, we have a NAMA also in coffee, and that's the kind of things we're trying to look at.
And I think this is exactly, and it builds very much on what was being said earlier. I know you came a couple of minutes late, that's just why. But what I'm going to do is, because I want to come back to this, because this is critical. I mean, Simon Miller, you're listening to this at the moment. You're coordinating the Cool Farm tool. And I mean, one of the reasons that was brought together was exactly, listening to this conversation was to then provide some of the tools that Kristen spoke about is necessary to create the sort of frameworks. I mean, maybe if you just very quickly, and I'm only giving you a very short platform, but that's just explain what the Cool Farm tool is, but then link it to this conversation.
Sure. So Cool Farm tool is a community interest company, and it's really very much about collaboration. So food businesses, fertilizer businesses, and NGOs coming together with the scientists and academics to actually work out the best ways to measure on-farm sustainability. The idea behind it started with Unilever. We were trying to do this unilaterally. But off the back of that, Kellogg became involved, YARA became involved, PepsiCo, McCain, Heineken, so a number of very large food businesses said, let's do this together, let's get the best science behind it, so we can actually measure on-farm emissions in a consistent way. So we have University of Aberdeen, Oxford, Cambridge, Wageningen, Potsdam, so leading universities all putting their scientific intelligence into a single tool that businesses can use. I thought what was really interesting was the discussion on soil.
There's also just do you have civil society involved in that as well? But this is not just a sort of business academic, as far as I understand it.
So I mean, I guess one of the key points is free for farmers. So it's being very widely used by farmers all over the world. So 60,000 cocoa growers have used it off their own back. It's all online and freely available. So it's very much the mission of the Cool Farm tool is to get it out there, to get people using it, and to make it farmer-friendly and accessible. So although it's science-based, it's very accessible in the format that it takes. It's quite quick and easy to use. What we show repeatedly from science is that the major source of emissions is linked to high amounts of soil and the types of fertilizers you put in and the responsible use of those fertilizers. And with the right applications, yields can go up and we can make dramatic reductions in emissions. So we've got lots of case studies that show that, and it enables farmers to understand it. So they can sit down, they can run different scenarios live and see immediate results and see actually the effect of different applications and what that can do for the overall footprint per kilogram of product. I think one kind of question perhaps to put out there is just the question of trade-offs. Water and particularly biodiversity has been mentioned already today. I think something we're really wrestling with is how do we get that sustainable intensification, also maintain or ideally enhance biodiversity without that chemical going in different directions. So we are looking at those metrics in parallel, but I'm very interested to hear other views on how we manage that kind of tension.
Mr. Philippe, just a quick
remark on that, because I mentioned earlier that we need to go from theory to practice. And to go from theory to practice, the key is knowledge management. From the research, and application in the field, and that's exactly, I couldn't agree more than.
So, Eric Solheim, I'm going to draw on you since we have you in the room, which is great. And just because here you've got some very practical conversations around knowledge, around agriculture, the role of smallholder farmers, but then you're talking about millions of people worldwide, and the need to rethink the frame, in terms of taking this much broader into a much new innovative thinking around biomass and the leadership that's required. But just sort of your thoughts here in terms of at a global level, how do you link this local and this global in a strong and powerful way?
Just a few comments. I mean, others here know the specifics of agriculture much better than I do. I mean, grown up in a city, and I cannot name any specific agriculture knowledge. But what's for sure the case is that for the first time in human history, they set global goals with one aim: to integrate fundamentally environment and development into one set of objectives. That's fundamental because until now these have been very separate, and there is hardly any sector which is more key to success here than agriculture, and it's hardly any sector where it's so obvious that you must integrate them. You need rapid increase in the productivity of agriculture, in particular in Africa, but also in other parts of the world. Otherwise, you can for sure not eradicate hunger and all the other aims. We need that, and it must happen in an environmentally friendly way, which makes it possible to grow without destroying nature. What is very surprising when you consider that everyone here will agree that agriculture is key. But reality is that agriculture is very low on the global agenda. Very low. And it's also very low on the national agenda in many nations. In many African nations, 70 to 80% of the people are still employed in agriculture, but there is very limited domestic debate about it. And frankly, the most important position in the land, to be the Minister of Agriculture, is not one of the sought for political positions. It's long on the ranking list of where
I'm hoping to see that change. Yeah.
And same is the case globally. And YARA and others have a big job to put it much higher on the agenda. One suggestion would be to, I mean, we have any number of global general conferences of different types. What we do need to meet global conference on agriculture at the highest level. How do we come together globally? How do we encourage nations to do better? How do we set up the global systems better? But at the highest level of politics. And that means the Obamas, the Merkels, the Xi Jinpings, because this is an absolutely key. We have all the genders conferences, but we need a certain such an agriculture. We need a similar thing for energy. And if I may make one other comment, then you and others are doing a great job in getting this up on the agenda, but there is a long way to really pretty where it deserves to be. I mean, Africa can never get out of poverty without enormous increase in the productivity of agriculture. Also need to industrialize, and these are linked, and it must happen rapidly if we are to succeed. The beauty now, compared to the past, is that we have 50 years of experience of development. And the last 2 decades are by far the most successful in human history. There's been enormous development. So we basically know what works. And there's no need to run around the world to reinvent what works. We know what works.
Do we have the leadership there in terms of the systems leadership? I mean, I know we've got to get it up on the agenda, we know what works, but do we actually have the sort of systems leadership that is being shown by, say, the minister in Costa Rica and thinking, agriculture in a broad-based context?
To me, no. There is very limited global leadership in this area. What you need to do is to bring together the companies which are essential. I mean, the global companies, the Kellogg's and the Unilevers and the Walmarts and all the other big companies. But you need to bring out together civil society organizations, key political leaders to set an agenda. And if I may suggest what we need to do, there is one nation which is more successful in this area than any other nation, as I can see, that's Vietnam. In the 1990s, Vietnam was the biggest rice importer on the planet. Now, Vietnam is the second biggest rice exporter on the planet. And what they've done is basically replicable everywhere. I mean, you need to look into local circumstances for sure, but all the major facets of what Vietnam has done can be replicated everywhere. Very briefly, you must make the property rights for the farm clear. Because it's very hard to invest in a farm where the property rights are unclear. That's a huge issue in many parts of Africa. Vietnamese have done that. You need to relate agriculture to a market. They cannot be self-sustained agriculture, that can never grow. You need to link the market. Then you need rural roads to bring in fertilizer and other input and to bring out the product out. The Vietnamese have done that. You need the best advice what are the best crops available, and for sure with climate as an important dimension here, you need to look into that. Then you need advice from, in case of Vietnam, from state entity, but they can also be done by private, but you need to give best advice. And finally, they have made loans, small loans available, so that the farmer, he or she, can invest in the farm and increase the productivity. And to me, none of these are rocket science. I mean, for sure, Costa Rica is much above African level. You may have done all this, but all these are applicable also in the most destitute parts of the world. And we need to have the ethics urgent.
John, from a Kellogg perspective, listening to what Eric Solheim's saying, I mean, can you take like major crops like rice and fundamentally rethink the way that we're doing this? And do you see that at a country level, like in Vietnam, is there a willingness to rethink the way that, say, agriculture has been done in the case of rice for maybe thousands of years?
Yeah, I think we each have our own role to play. And so governments have a role to play and large companies have a role to play. And we can work together to get a better outcome. It is obviously easier for us to pull through our supply chain. So when we are operating in Latin America or in parts of Asia, we find the ability where we are buying those grains to get back on the farms and pull the right sustainable agricultural practices through our supply chain. And we get great support from various countries, Thailand on rice, etc. So you see a varying level of support from different governments. When you get to Africa, I think there are two challenges. One is our supply chain. A lot of the global food companies' supply chains in Africa is relatively small. We don't have large African businesses. The second is, in some cases in Africa, we have worked with local farmers to put the smart agricultural practices in place, and then the transportation system wasn't there to be able to get it to where we needed to have it, to make food out of it. And the challenge then was the government prepared to put the logistical solution in place. And there's some of the conversations we're still having. So in general, we can normally act as an independent operator and pull through our system. And at times we need government help, and at times there's a need for more government help.
In terms of these policy changes, Kristen, do you see that we have the tools in place? I mean, I was listening to the Cool Farm tool, but which is trying to aggregate a lot of that knowledge and bring it into an open source common platform. Do we have enough, in place to really make this transformational step change? And it's a leadership question, or do we still need to get some clarity on some of those tools that will underline policy shifts? Or
I think there is a lot of positive things happening at the local level, but that it need to be upscaled, like Eric said, because he is right when it comes to the attention that the agricultural sector has in different countries. It is much less than it deserved to be in very many countries, and also here at the COP, even if there are more attention collected to that now. But I think that is something that we can follow up after the COP, because we can see that more and more both companies and states and organizations are paying attention to this sector, and we could connect, but of course we need to upscale, because as several of you has already said, it is a lot of these small farmers are, they are fighting every day to adapt to climate change, to try to secure their family, to have something left to sell on the market, and there is a lot of progress that can be done.
And I think the aggregation point that you were making earlier, that the development fund were making, is critical, because for the individual smallholder woman who is living this life on a daily basis and watching climate change happen in front of their eyes, this is there is a real urgency sort of here and now. And so then how do you then bring that voice up, so that millions can actually engage around that, and you can have these country. And what I like at the moment is just seeing the sort of country leadership element come through. It isn't just a global conversation here in Paris and then something expected to be done at the individual farmer level. You're seeing real country ownership come through. I'm just going to go back to the audience, Lithuania. I don't know, you've been listening to this, whether you want to come in or there are other people who want to to engage. As I said, this is not a question and answer session. This is, if you're picking up on something that someone else has said, please, sort of, this is really a dialogue. We can't have solved all the problems. If it was that easy and we could take this consensus out from this room, that would be easy.
Just picking up the question earlier about the pull-through from consumers, maybe it's a fellow can interpret in your way, you'll also see this. How does that manifest itself in terms of the corporate decision making? And we can hear that consumers do care about it. Is there a price signal? Does that translate significantly enough to really change your decisions?
Well, we are, as a color company, a consumer goods company. So to give you a sense of that, we spend about $1.5 billion a year on brand building. So marketing is essential to what we do. Consumers around the world, particularly in the developed economies, want to know what happens to their food and how it's being grown, how it's being sourced. So when the food production process goes from something that happens in supply chain to make food, to something that happens to engage with consumers and tell the consumer a story about, it fundamentally shifts its importance in a consumer goods company. And that's where we are today. Baby boomers care about food, where it comes from. Millennials are passionate about it. And with the mobile phones and iPads and the Internet of Things, the ability to get information is incredible now. And so we have to be constantly telling our story and ensuring that we are living up to our values, not just making statements. And so that's why we're very active, not just in the developed economies where those consumers care more, but across our entire supply chain, so that our brand is consistent and our practices are consistent.
Frederick, just listen to Chris and what you were saying about going out after COP. I mean, there's sort of 4 CEOs and a minister here. I mean, going forward from here, I mean, how do we, agriculture, we've always nearly got it on the agenda, not quite. There seems to be sort of increasing focus every time. From how do we really now pick this up? What do you see as needed to really use a post-COP, post-sustainable development goals world to really create the systems change we need?
There is, as it's been said, definitely a lack of having this up on the agenda, both for food production, but also the need for bioenergy in future will be huge, if not will be very costly to combat climate change. For me, it's also a very important point that, new technologies enable us to communicate and distribute knowledge in a different way than before. And then we need also not to look at this not only as agriculture, but this is energy, and we need to find the synergies between this. It's so that if we should grow biofuel for the aviation industry by soya, we need to grow from here in Paris to Norway, all the land, to make the aviation industry. If we do it with algae, we can maybe do it with the size of Belgium. So we need to find these new ways. I'm very glad that Kevin's looking into the ocean of possibilities of growing biomass, also food and energy in the ocean. It's surprisingly few who does that. And it's really, really one of the things that is making me optimistic. You see also this in the last IPCC. There is an estimate that we could produce around 100 gigajoule of energy on land-based biomass, but there is no science that IPCC can put into the report on how we can produce food and energy from the ocean. So there is a lack of understanding. It could be one of the things that could make us a little bit more optimistic in how to combat global warming. And that is how the soil in Norway was fertilized in the beginning. We brought seaweed and we used it as fodder and so on. I see the enormous potential of also producing fodder by mangroves growing in new regions and so on. So there is a lot of potential here. And then it's extremely much better that people grow biomass, if it's mangroves or if it's traditional agriculture or if it's algae, is much better than carrying around on a Kalashnikov. So we also need that kind of mindset shift in the developing countries. Who is going to produce the energy in the future?
But if I make the jump from that energy piece to, I mean, Eric Solheim, you were talking about Vietnam, and it was interesting when we talked with them about rice and water, this question of water use. You know, the Minister Phat from Vietnam, the Minister of Agriculture there, was saying that 25% of their national electricity bill was pumping water around, you know, to the rice paddies. And so, you know, they were very prepared to rethink the way that rice was grown, to do this in a much smarter and more, you know, sort of pragmatic and intensified way, rather than, and I said that that's thousands of years of culture that you would be turning on its head. And he was like, no, but that's what we've got to do. But it was, you know, it was interesting, and they've done work with Oxfam and various other players to look at how they could, you know, grow rice in a much more sort of sustainable way. But then they're now talking about this whole next step around energy. I mean, for Costa Rica, you also were alluding to the renewables energy side before. Do you see the conversation going beyond agriculture now? Do you see a much more integrated economy conversation where this is not just about growing, but actually looking at agriculture in the whole context of rural economies and, you know, the link to energy and all of that?
Certainly. I see the conversation going in that direction. I think that's the right direction to go. I think agriculture in itself can reduce the amount of energy it uses from the grid by generating their own energy. That's what we're doing, for example, in the coffee NAMA, like coffee processing part is using energy that is produced from the processing itself. And other organic agricultural residues, for example, but they can feed the grid. And also, agriculture can benefit society in general as far as energy, but also can get benefits. And the sources of energy we're talking about are many those two, like producing biofuels in a sustainable manner, and also using the residues. Like we now have the technology, talking about rice, to produce ethanol from rice stubble, for example. Or we can, you know, the algae is a great alternative. I think we need to make it profitable, because as far as I know, it's very expensive right now. But I don't know if the technology is there to be able to have the cost down so it can be used for fuels. But also, you can see those algae producing fuels, producing animal feed, producing fertilizer. So you need to think about multiple use crops, multiple use agroecosystems, and yes, the discussion goes far beyond agriculture. Renewables, in our case, you have to say the most is hydroelectric. Biomass is tiny compared with those, but we would like to see more biomass in the future.
So, the Nature Conservancy, I'm looking at you at the back of the room there, Justin. Yeah, from an environmental perspective, I mean, you're listening to this fairly wide-ranging conversation around agriculture, you know, land use, biomass. Yeah, where's your takeaway here?
I think it's a fascinating discussion. I think it's an extremely important discussion. And what pains me is to see that all the discussions I've been in the last 10 days have been in small rooms talking about agriculture, when it should be front and center of so many of the issues that we're talking about. We cannot achieve any of our sustainable development goals. We can't achieve our climate goals, and we can't achieve food security goals without addressing agriculture. So I think that the key takeaway for me is we have to reimagine agriculture. We have to reimagine our land use globally, and that calls for a revolution in thinking. And I think, you know, some of Frederick's points sort of point in that direction, but there's not nearly enough of that kind of thinking. I spent 15 years in the renewable energy sector before I moved across into the land sector, And it would be interesting to reflect as to whether the renewables that we have today would have been driven from the incumbent energy providers versus actually the disruptors and the entrepreneurs and the innovators. And if you look at something like Tesla and electric vehicles, it took Elon Musk to sort of break through with a very, very radical different vision for electric vehicles that would not have been realized were it not for that. And he struggled at first to get any venture capital to support him to realize that vision. And we know it's now worth it's got half the market cap of General Motors. So my question is, we at the Nature Conservancy are investing more and more in some of these solutions. We can capitalize some of these solutions as an environmental organization. We're working with Kellogg and Monsanto, and Cargill, and many other large ag companies in the US, looking at different models for how some of this can be imagined. We can be a catalyst. The big companies are trying to do their right thing, but as you've already outlined, your focus is on your quarterly results and ensuring that you're sort of going to move your conventional business forward versus actually reimagining the agriculture system overall. I head up our lands program, one of the biggest lands programs in the Conservancy. I was just doing the math because I managed to secure some funding to do a communication campaign around lands this year for the first time to sort of put some of that together. It was $150,000. So compared, and so that's 4 orders of magnitude less than the amount you spend on brand building for Kellogg, and that's not in any way a criticism, but just the reality of if it's organizations like the Nature Conservancy, like Bellona, like others who are trying to reimagine the future, how can we genuinely be catalytic, and where are the actual entrepreneurs going to come from who are going to really drive this business forward in a very different way, in a different direction? Because I think it's only if we start to do that politicians will really start to care, because the issues are the same issues they've been for decades and decades.
I mean, I'm going to come back to a point I asked the panel earlier around leadership, because we can have this aspirational goal of having it as a centerpiece of COP, but do we have the systems leadership, the leaders there who are thinking across sectors? And they don't have to be a head of state or a CEO of a large international company. I mean, I'm talking about right through organizations and at country level. Do we have that systems leadership to really sort of push this forward?
I think we do, but we haven't found them. And I think we keep trying to create big top-down solutions, and the GAXAs and all these great, we make these big statements that we then, and I think the solutions have got to be coming all bottom-up as well. So how do we actually support some of these institutions or these organizations, find these sort of social entrepreneurs and really empower them to make change in a very different way? Some of the types of innovations Frederick's talking about and others are talking about, how do we actually give some of those a chance? So we had this great dinner last night. The UN Foundation and Nature Conservancy organized a dinner. It was talking about this. How do we use our lands? Because whether it's renewable energy, whether it's agriculture, whether it's storing carbon in our forests, land is the most precious resource we have, and how we use it over the next few decades will determine, in a large part, whether we can achieve all these goals.
I can sense Frederick nodding beside me even without looking at him, and so I'm going to, but I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, it was mentioned here how Vietnam have gone from being one of the second biggest rice importer to now being a huge exporter. It's really inspiring to work in Jordan. I think it's the 3 worst countries when it comes to fresh water. And to be able to create engagement all the way locally and all the way up to the king. He wants us now to pump the water all the way up to the Dead Sea and use the waterfall to make a hydropower plant for the 600 meters waterfall down. Yeah, big thoughts, but it's realistic, yeah? It's a huge mismatch between the solutions and the finance sector today. And I think the agriculture sector illustrates that more than any other sector. So your comment is very, very relevant. And I had dinner with Elon Musk 2 days ago, and we discussed, because it's quite tough to do what we're doing, and we are and for me, Sahara Forest project, that's my little Tesla, yeah. And it's frustrating to see how difficult it is to get the big companies into this. YARA has helped us, and it's a mismatch, because for the financial sector especially, there is no exit strategy.
Yep.
And we need to do a match between this kind of solutions and the financial sector, because it's kind of venture that needs long-term money. and when you have that, there is no exit strategy for the finance sector. We are not in the stock market, we are not in bonds or so on. So this mismatch is illustrated more than anywhere else in the agriculture sector, and that is, we have a lot of small farmers, because they are not at the stock market. How do you get the finance sector? Because what even says to us, remember, 40% of the 500 biggest companies, they don't exist in 15 years. You will exist. So I'm still quite optimistic.
It's the Tesla model. But, and Kristen, just you've been doing a lot of work on bonds and things like that, but not necessarily maybe on agriculture. But I mean, is some of that learning, can we sort of, you know, leapfrog in a way some of the learning that we've gone through on some of the climate bonds, and actually look at this in terms of green growth within the agriculture sector to link up some of these land conversations that you know, the Nature Conservancy are talking about?
Green bonds are taking an increasing part of the market, but still it's, you know, just a tiny little fraction. But we are issuing second opinions, so independent assessments on green bonds, just to find out how green are they, and to avoid greenwashing of green bonds. And we have developed this methodology. We call it 3 shades of green: dark green, middle green, and light green. And now we can see that all these companies, they are proposing to be dark green, all of them. It's really very exciting. It's interesting. It's challenging. I think it will increase, but the scale is too small yet. But of course, this would be, you know, this kind of ideas, tomorrow's solutions, that would be dark green bonds. If it's possible to connect investors and the projects. So I think that, well, we just have to be more convincing in thinking big. And of course, we need examples. So the Qatar example is one, the Jordan example is another, and of course, we have a lot of projects going on. That's easy. I assume it's easy to fund them, but maybe you could also be, you know, using green bonds as a way to finance new investments.
I mean, I'm going to draw this to a close, because I'm sure many of us have things that we're moving on to and all of that. But as you can see, I mean, yeah, very wide-ranging discussion. I mean, are there any just quick, you know, while we're thinking big, are there any quick snapshots that anyone has here or in the room, this sort of 20-second, you know, snapshot for us to take away?
Yes, I would like to comment on bottom-up approaches. And I think the agricultural sector is really the sector feeling the effects of climate change right now. They are not in an air conditioning room. They are out in the field, and their crops are not growing well. And we have had drought, we have had floods, and our government has spent a lot of money in relief funds. And growers told us in a meeting, and with this I would like to close, those relief funds are okay, but more than giving us the fish, please teach us how to fish. So that's, I think,
and make sure the water's clean and that you fish it. Frederick.
Now my job is trying to make the sky clear, the ocean blue, and the desert green. And I think that when you're looking at the challenges we have ahead, I mentioned the Dead Sea. I think it's possible to make the whole Jordan Valley green. I think that we, in a way, could use this technology in any desert less than 200 meters above the seawater level, And this also we're working now in Tunisia. You have huge saltwater aquifers that we think we have to study could change the way of growing agriculture in Tunisia. Why did the war in Syria start? It was lack of water. Yeah? This is all a question about security. Jules Verne said in 1905, he wanted to flood what we call the Qatar Depression in Egypt. It's 4 times the Nile Delta, and it's a lot of food produced in the Nile Delta. 150 meters under sea water level, 10 kilometers from the coast. It didn't happen. He wanted to make a saving route to Northern Africa. Then Anwar Sadat said in 1971, I want to fill this and make hydropower when I'm doing it, but it's the last part of African Rift Valley, so you could risk in creating earthquakes, so they didn't do it. But we are evaporating the water. So my big dream is to fill up the whole Sahara Depression with new food production. Look at the area inside Senegal. It will go 4,000 kilometers, and the desert is not very high above the seawater, or the ocean. So it's a huge potential.
Great. Just a few concluding remarks from me. I just want to say it's absolutely possible to run a for-profit company and do what is right for the climate. And it's all about finding the right solution, focusing on the right use of the resources. And just to take an example, in Europe, when fertilizer use peaked in the mid-80s, it was 12 million tons. Today, 9 million tons. And at the same time, productivity has increased. So it's about the right application. So for me, this also presents a business opportunity to create a competitive advantage through the right use of the product. And it is important that this is higher on the agenda. At least it is on the agenda now. It's low on the agenda. But I think let's use this momentum now to bring this up towards the top of the agenda, because at the end of the day, 25 to 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions come from agriculture. It is an area where we can make great impact.
I guess all I'd say is I'm optimistic. You know, the fact that I'm here as the chairman of the company rather than chief sustainability officer or something like that being here, it reflects how this has changed in the agenda. And I'm not here talking to 100,000 consumers. I'm here talking to people who can help us find a solution together. So I'm fascinated by some things I've heard today about really blue sky thinking, green desert thinking, that can really provide future opportunities. But you know, I think it's good that as all members of that supply chain, we come together and find out how we can work together so we can scale the solution, so we can have the greatest human positive impact, both environmental positive, smallholder farmers, women, etc. And you know, you could argue we've made some great progress over the last couple of decades. I think the real opportunities over the next few decades, and that's where our focus is as we go forward.
Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed a conversation as opposed to a series of presentations. I definitely had an enjoyable time being able to moderate this. So enjoy the rest of your time at the COP. And I mean, I hope we can really make sure that, as was said, agriculture is really lifted up and put center stage. Thank you very much.
Yes.